He left the UK to sell Akara in Nigeria. Years later, he shocked everyone. Followed that Bottle Fat show, Imagine This. You've spent nearly 12 years in London. 12 years of cold winters, double shifts and saving every pound you can. 12 years of watching your friends post birthday parties and weddings back home while you're eating reheated rice alone in a flat you share with 3 other people. You finally come home. And instead of resting, instead of celebrating, instead of doing anything that looks remotely like success, you start frying Akara by the roadside. Now, before you click away, before you laugh, before you say, that would never be me, I want you to stay with the story. Because what happened next? Nobody saw coming. Not his family, not his friends, not the people who whispered behind his back. And honestly, not even him. And this is the story of how a man everyone called a failure became one of the most respected entrepreneurs in his city. But here's the question I want you to sit with from the very beginning. Was he the one who failed, or was everyone else wrong about what success actually looks like? Part 1. London was never what I've imagined. Tunde left Lagos at 24. His mother cried at the airport. His father pressed a small envelope into his hands. Inside was a handwritten note that said, "Make us proud, son." The whole neighborhood turned up to say goodbye. The aunties, the uncles, the cousins who were secretly jealous. Everyone waved him off like he was going to collect gold. And maybe they believe that, because that's the story people tell about abroad. That you go, you suffer small, and then the money starts coming. What nobody tells you is what small actually means. Tunde landed in London in the early 2000s, and by week 3, the dream already had cracks in it. The cold wasn't just weather, it was a feeling. The city moved fast and nobody looked at you, nobody checked to leave, nobody asked if you'd eaten, nobody. He found work quickly, which was the one thing that matched the stories, but the work, it didn't match anything he'd imagined. Monday through Saturday, had plenty upon his shift at the warehouse in Enfield. Then 2 evenings a week, security at a venue in central London. He barely slept, he ate on the go. His social life was the bus ride to work and the bus ride back. His rent swallowed nearly half his income. The rest went on bills, food, and almost every month without fail, a transfer home. Because back in Lagos, life didn't pause. His mother's medication, his younger brother's school fees, a cousin's rent arrears. There was always something. And because they believed Tunde was living comfortably in the UK, the requests came freely, without guilt. Because surely in London, money was easy. What they didn't see was Tunde counting coins to make his Oyster card last a week. What they didn't see was him eating the same cheap meals on rotation just to stay within budget. What they didn't see was him sitting in that cramped flat on a Sunday evening, scrolling through photos from parties back home and feeling a loneliness so heavy it was almost physical. He made friends eventually. Mostly other Nigerians in the same situation. They'd get together sometimes and laugh. The way you laugh when the only other option is to cry. They called it managing. They were all just managing. Ask yourself something. Would you have stayed in his position? The long hours, the loneliness, the illusion you have to maintain for people back home, would you have kept going? There's the puppet type of assassin. Tunde kept going. For nearly 12 years, he kept going, got better jobs over time. He moved to slightly better accommodation. He learned the systems. He even tried to study, started an evening course in logistic management that he eventually had to drop because the shifts conflicted with classes. He never quite broke through. He was always just above water, never able to breathe properly, never able to excel. By the time he was in his mid-30s, Tunde had savings, but not the kind people imagined, not the kind that changes your life, enough to survive a few months if things went wrong. That was it. 12 years of work. That was the total. And then his father got sick. Part 2, coming home. The call came on a Tuesday night. His father had collapsed. Tests were being run. The family needed him home. Tunde booked his flight within 48 hours. He planned to stay 3 weeks, help stabilize things, see his father recover, then go back to London and resume the life he'd been building, or the life that looked like building from the outside. When he landed in Lagos, the airport hit him differently than he expected. The noise, the heat, the familiar chaos of people and voices and color, something in his chest loosened, just slightly, that he hadn't realized had been tight for years. His family met him with relief, but also immediately with expectation. Where were the big bags, the gifts, the cousins lined up with their wish list, his aunties kissing his cheeks and whispering requests in the same breath, old friends texting within hours, brought your back, link up, I need a small favor. And his father, thank God, was recovering. The illness was serious but manageable with the right care and medication. But what Tunde saw when he looked around the house where he grew up was a family that had been quietly struggling while everyone pretended otherwise. The roof needed repair. His younger brother had been out of work for months. The money Tunde had been sending home, which had felt enormous from the London side, had stretched thin across too many needs. The illusion ran both ways. They thought he was rich. He thought they were managing. Nobody had been fully honest. Not the popular side and the entire 3 weeks became 6 weeks. 6 weeks became 2 months. He told himself it was for his father, and partly that was true. But if he was honest with himself, and this is something Tunde would later say, he was also exhausted in a way that a flight back to London couldn't fix. He needed to think, he needed space. And then one morning, a completely ordinary morning, everything shifted. Hot tea, the come that changed everything. It was just past 6 in the morning. Tunde had walked out to get some air. Their neighborhood was already alive. The kind of early morning African energy that London simply doesn't have. Generators humming, gatesmen sweeping, the smell of smoke and cooking oil drifting down the street. And at the corner, a woman, standing behind a large frying pan, pack her sizzling hot brown oil in our quest, in our drink. Not all 3 people, a proper queue. 15, maybe 20 people. Some in work clothes, some with children on their way to school. A Dampo driver who pulled over and was hanging halfway out of his window, coins already in his hand. Tunde stood and watched for a while. He came back the next morning, same scene, same queue. He started asking questions, quietly, casually. How much does she sell a piece for? How many does she sell per day? What time does she start? What time does she sell out? Then numbers made him stop and do the maths again and again. She was selling out before 8 o'clock. Every day, without marketing, without a brand, without packaging, without any of the things Tunde had studied in that logistics course he never finished. She was selling on the sheer force of demand, but you. And selling, but reaching to a manner, what if this was done properly? What if the quality was consistent every single day? What if the presentation was clean and appealing? What if there was a small name on the bag? What if there were 2 locations instead of 1? He tried to talk himself out of it. He really did, but the idea wouldn't leave him. Now, I want you to think about this moment. Would you have had the courage to even consider it? Most people would have walked away and gone back inside. Let me know what you would have done. When Tunde mentioned it carefully, casually, to his family, the reaction was swift. His aunt laughed first, then stopped when she realized he wasn't joking, then laughed again. His cousins said plainly, you spent 12 years in London to come and fry Akara family WhatsApp group. And I need you to understand how Nigerian family WhatsApp groups work. Became the setting for what can only be described as a full community tribunal. People he hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly very concerned about his life choices. Some were embarrassed. Some were worried. Some, if we're being honest, were quietly pleased because it's easier to watch someone fall than to watch them fly. The word spread in the neighborhood. People pointed. Some laughed openly. Old friends who used to call regularly went quiet. One of them told the mutual contact, Tunde has lost it. Fair, up and upper. London must have broken him. And the witty priest passing, and he kept going. Part 4, building something real. Tunde didn't start big. He started honest. He spent 2 weeks learning properly, not guessing. He studied which type of beans produced the best texture. He tested oils. He worked out ratios. He talked to women who had been frying Akara for decades and listened to them the way a student listens to a professor. Then he started small, very small, a modest setup. Clean equipment. A simple branded bag he designed with the help of a young graphic artist from the neighborhood. The brand name was straightforward. The look was clean. That was intentional. In a market full of informal sellers, simply looking professional was a form of advertising. The first week was quiet, but the product was good, genuinely, noticeably good, and he was consistent. Same quality, same time, same spots. By week 3, the regulars were coming back. And they were bringing people. He introduced something almost nobody in his area was doing at the time. He accepted transfers. A small thing, but for the salary earners, the office workers, the people who'd run out of cash in the morning rush, being able to pay by phone was the difference between buying and walking path. He added variety slowly. Different sizes. A more option 2 days a week. He collected feedback. Genuinely listened to it. Social media came next. Not professional, not polished, just honest. Short videos of the cooking process. Behind the scenes content. The story of what he was doing and why. People engaged because it felt real, which it was. The online attention brought something he hadn't expected. The gossip worked in his favor. The same people who've been talking about the guy who wasted 12 years in London to fry Akara were now sharing his videos. Curiosity brought new customers. Mockery had accidentally become marketing. 6 months into, and then I posted staff members that met young people from the neighborhood who needed work. 8 months in, he opened the second location. And here's the parts I want you to hear clearly. This was not easy. There were mornings where things went wrong. Supply issue, staff problems. Days where the sales were thin and the doubts crept back in. He almost quit twice. He's been open about that. Once after a particularly brutal week of losses. Once after a family confrontation that left him shaken. But he'd made a decision that carried him through those moments. He was building something, not performing something. He wasn't doing this to impress anyone. He was doing it because he'd seen an opportunity and he believed in his ability to execute it better than it had been done before for once. That distinction between building and performing turned out to matter enormously. Part 5. The visitor from London, about 2 years into the business, something happened that Tunde didn't plan for. A former colleague from his London days, a man named Samin, who'd left the UK the year before and returned to different parts of Nigeria, came to visit family in Tunde's city. Someone told Samin about Tunde's business, half as a joke, half out of genuine curiosity. What he found was not a man scraping by. What he found were 2 busy locations, a small but growing team, a brand that people in the area recognized, a man who, for perhaps the first time in their shared history, looked genuinely well-rested, like someone who'd arrived somewhere rather than someone running from something. So I called mutual friends back in London that same evening, and the story spread, not as a joke this time, as something else entirely. The relatives who had laughed, some of them started coming around to help. Tunde doesn't hold grudge about that, which is a character detail worth noting. He says the support, whenever it was still support. The old friends who had gone quiet started reaching back out. Some with genuine congratulations. Some, if you're honest, with business ideas they wanted him to fund. He learned to tell the difference. And the aunt who had laughed first. She came to his second location one morning, sat down, drank her tea, watched the queue, and said nothing for a long time. Then she looked at him and said, you're always the most stubborn one. He took it as a compliment. The lesson final part. Here's what I don't want you to take from this story. I don't want you to watch this and think, I should go and fry Akara and become rich. That's not the point. Businesses succeed and fail for hundreds of reasons, and no single product is a guaranteed path to wealth. Tunde will tell you that himself. What I want you to take from this is something harder and more useful. Tunde spent 12 years performing success in a place where he was quietly struggling. He maintained an image for his family, for his community, for himself, that had very little to do with how he actually felt. And the moment he stepped outside of that performance, the moment he allowed himself to be curious about something that didn't look impressive, that's when things changed. The mockery almost stopped him. The family pressure almost stopped him. The version of himself that cared more about appearances than outcomes almost stopped him. But he made a different choice. He chose to build something instead of look like something. And the other thing, the thing about location, about abroad, about home, there is no magical place. London was not the dream his younger self imagined. Nigeria was not the failure people assumed it would be. What made the difference was not geography. It was clarity, focus, a willingness to do the unglamorous work well and to keep going past the point where most people stop. Some people thrive abroad. Some people thrive at home. Some people thrive when they combine both. The question is never really, where should I be? The question is, am I building something honest where I am? Tunde is not done building. He'll tell you that freely. There are still days that are harder than he makes them look. Still challenges that don't have clean answers. But the man who stood watching the Akara queue one quiet morning, doing maths in his head and daring himself to believe it, that man is not someone anyone is laughing at anymore. And the thing that nobody expected, he says those 12 years in London weren't wasted. They taught him discipline, punctuality, how to operate in a structured environment, how to deliver consistency day after day, even when you don't feel like it, brought all of that back home with him. He just didn't expect that frying oil and bean flour would be where it landed. So let me ask you one final time, was he the one who failed, or was he the one who figured something out that everyone else was too proud to see? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you know someone who left home chasing a dream that didn't quite look the way they imagined, share this with them. Not because it has all the answers, but because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is help someone feel less alone in the middle of their story. If this kind of content speaks to you, real stories, honest lessons, no short wakes, then subscribe. We're telling more of them. See you in the